episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor. It is the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime, not just a tagline, but our reality. And tonight, a very special evening because we are joined by the parents of a victim. I'm going to introduce you to them in just a moment. The other two faces should be familiar to you if you follow or watch Surviving the Survivor. But a very quick recap, because there are many people who are not familiar with this story. And in my personal opinion, having spent more than 25 years in media, you're going to hear about this much, much more. It's going to become a much, much bigger story than it already is. And it's pretty big right now, but the magnitude will no doubt grow. But back in November of 2024, just a few months ago, 26-year-old AI researcher and OpenAI whistleblower Suchir Balaji was found dead in his San Francisco apartment. Authorities there, namely the San Francisco Police Department, ruled it a suicide, and they did so in a very, very hasty manner within 40 minutes, which we're going to get into. And his parents are obviously very unhappy about this, and they are convinced it is not a self-unaliving. I hate having to use those words, but it is YouTube, and we get yelled at. But they are convinced it is not a self-unaliving and that there was something more sinister at play. So without further ado, I want to welcome Poornima Ramarao and Balaji Ramamurthy. And I will go by first names now because it's not it doesn't roll off the tongue. But Balaji and Poornima, first of all, thank you so much for being here. And I think I speak for everyone at STS when we send our heartfelt condolences about the loss of your son. And the very obvious first question is, I already know the answer that you're tough as nails, but how are you holding up right now, a few months out from your son's death?
It's been very difficult, in fact. Like, it's shattering also. Like, the non-cooperation from authorities from step one is most heartbreaking. The authorities that's supposed to stand up for truth and bring justice to us and hold our rights, they are covering up, and they're 100% involved in covering up what has happened. That's the most difficult part. And we know it's a long haul and a long route to justice, but the hope of fighting for justice is keeping us alive and moving forward.
And that is very amazing. Can I ask you, do you have other children? Was Suchir an only child?
He's
Yeah,
only
it's only
child.
child.
Only child. And just by the way, if you don't know, the two men on the right, up top, Special Agent retired Scott Duffy and Doug McGregor, the geo profiler, who has a new show on our second channel, STS Best Talk. But Poornima had some questions because we did a previous show about this, specifically having to do with geofencing, which we'll get into. And I said, I know just the right guy. I can't answer it, but I know the right guy and I know the right FBI agent. So for those who don't know, Scott and Doug have both helped out other victims' families. Now, Poornima, if you can, just tell us, a little bit about Suchir. I understand he was literally a prodigy, speaking full sentences at the age of 2. Sorry for covering you up there. Full sentences at the age of 2. He built the computer. He won computer contests. So take us back to 2 years old. How was your son speaking in full sentences?
He started learning alphabets at 13 months. Within a week, he completely picked up all the alphabets, to my surprise. And 18 months old, started recognizing words. I still remember when we went to Half Moon Bay, he said, I want pizza, and said, there's no Pizza Hut here. He looked around and said, there is pizzeria. See, there is pizza. Get me pizza. He was self-directed, and he knew what he wanted since the age of 1.5. His preschool teacher used to, tell you, okay, you know better than mom. That's how determined he was. And his kindness was seen at 18 months old. He used to melt for tears. He
Mhm.
was very kind soul, very brave. And like coming to this giftedness, when he was in second grade, we did the gifted testing and we knew he was gifted. And also like we sent him for some maths classes, and in those math classes they found out he was gifted in 3 days or so. More than that, when he started programming at the age of 11, we sent him for a summer camp for a week. Within 3 days, he picked up the syllabus and he started teaching other high school students and never stopped coding from that day onwards.
Did you
In
say he
fact,
was 11 when he started coding?
yeah, I
And
couldn't
and he
answer his questions when he was 11. He asked me some questions about algorithm, like algorithm efficiency and all. It was beyond my ability to answer.
now do you Poornima and Balaji, do you both work in computers? I'm curious. Did he get first of all, out of you two, where did he get the brains from? Is it a combination or is one of you smarter?
He's more than us. We both are in software.
Software. Yeah, I'm mostly in innovative side. She's more on analytical side. So it's a combination of right and left brains, we can say. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like he got the right and the left and then some. But I mean, when you saw Poornima, when you saw your son coding at age 11, I gotta be honest, I don't even know what coding. I have a niece who went to MIT and she codes. I have no idea what that means. So, I mean, did you know you had a special child? And I mean, in the best way possible at age 11 when he's doing things that kids in high school, college, and beyond couldn't do?
Yeah, actually, his pediatrician mentioned he was gifted when he was 8 months old. He was addressing me as mom. He called me Amma, like that's my mother tongue, right? So
Hmm.
that's when his pediatrician said he has some special abilities. And in my family, there are gifted children. It's very common. My cousin was a state player and she's a doctor. She's a prodigy herself. Giftedness runs in my family, but when I saw his essay at 14-year-old, his science paper, that's when I knew he's not gifted, he's a prodigy. He wrote about quantum computing in 2013 when he was 14 years old.
Scott Duffy, were you writing about quantum computing when you were 13 in Pennsylvania? Or
No.
no? I thought that might be the answer. So we're going to bring Scott and Doug into this conversation, but I want to get to um, sort of the latest information, and then we can work backwards. But um, for, let me go to Balaji. To you, I understand that you just filed suit against the city of San Francisco. Whoever's more comfortable answering the question, can you tell us what the lawsuit is and why you filed it?
Lawsuit is for the violation of CPRA, California Public Records Act. When they are not like, we had three attorneys call SFPD, and for all the three attorneys, they have informed they're not investigating, they have closed the investigation as suicide. When they have closed it as suicide, they should be releasing us the reports. They have held it from us.
Mm.
And also, what we mentioned there is like they have not done proper investigation. They have not even picked up the evidence. They picked up the key pieces of evidence behind, and they are quoting that they've seen the CCTV. Nobody has entered the building. Nobody has left. When we checked with the leasing office, they haven't even bothered to get a copy of the CCTV footage. So they're just making statements. That's very um, heartbreaking for us, because a life is lost, and the least they can do for the lost life is to look at the evidence and get the justice and make the parents feel at least little relieved. We are really heartbroken from their behavior and how they're doing.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
answer two ways. When press people call and ask them, they respond is the investigation is open and it is we are doing the investigation. But when, as a parents, we call, they say through attorney, they say it is closed. So there are two different way of answering in the phone. So we have to take this step for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah, I'm going to get into that right now. But you see these pictures, handsome, young kid, and he was raised in Cupertino, right, the home of Apple Computers.
Yes, yes. See, we got him one of the best schools in Bay Area. One of the best schools, top schools, is Monte Vista. He studied there. And even in Monte Vista, like he was topper, and his teachers knew he was exceptional. His friends knew he was exceptional.
Wow.
2016, he was national champion.
Yeah. But a lot of times, when you have someone who's so gifted, like a Bill Gates, they're kind of awkward. Look,
Yeah.
Elon Musk, a little awkward. But your son seemed to be extremely popular. Did well with the women, had a good personality. Am I on the mark here?
Yes,
I
he
mean,
had a good social
Very
circle,
good friend
and
circle.
we initially thought he has a close friends from high school, a few friends. But when we saw in the memorial almost 50, 60 friends turned up, then we know he has a
He was
big
very
following.
friendly.
Yes, he's
mm,
very kind and helpful to people. Even OpenAI recognize his kindness and helping juniors. I mean, in case of coding problems, he resolves them, helps them. So it's
mm.
very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see
He's
this comment here. It says on the ground. This reminds me of Ellen's case. So I just want you two to know that this weekend I was up in Philadelphia because we've been covering a story, and that story is about Ellen Greenberg. And if you research it a little bit, she was stabbed 20 times.
no.
And there are a lot of similarities, a lot of differences, but a lot of similarities. 10 of those stab wounds were to the back, and two, or at least one, was post mortem. And that was ruled a self unaliving. That's what I have to call it on YouTube, a self unaliving, the S word. And her parents, this happened in 2011, and hopefully you will not have to wait nearly that long. But just this past Saturday, the original medical examiner came out after pressure and media pressure and said that was not the case. It was something other than a self unaliving. And so now they're going to re examine, and very likely there'll be a wrongful death suit and possibly a criminal investigation. So it took the Greenbergs a long time, and hopefully that will not happen here if there was something sinister at play. But Scott Duffy, special agent, to you. So as you just heard, the parents filed suit against the city of San Francisco. And essentially, as you just heard, they're demanding access to police reports related to the son's death. Their attorney, and I think you heard him say there's three of them. One guy, though, Kevin Rooney, is basically citing a violation of public records. And as you heard Suchir's father just explain, the city, on the one hand, is telling people, hey, we're investigating this case, but then telling others that the case is closed. Case closed, case open. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Um, should, at this point, they have to turn over these records, in your opinion, to the family?
Yeah, so first and foremost, my deepest sympathies as I look at these pictures. And Poornima, I watched because I wanted to have a little bit more background, as I have not heard of this case until Joel told me about it, and then I watched your interview on Tucker. So I wanted a little bit of background, just so I can kind of have some things to give to you if as we talk tonight. So of course this is very confusing to me as a prior law enforcement officer. It's very disconcerting. I'm usually, as Joel will see and tell you, I'm very much on promoting law enforcement and all its accolades and its investigative abilities. And then when I see and have heard, taking you at your word, I am so upset with you. I have questions, and we can talk offline and online. But
Sure.
the and then already in these last horrible, what is it, just over 2 months, that you are you're getting stop signs, red lights at every juncture, and hearing your story of how the very first few minutes to the hours that you had to learn of your son's death is unacceptable. So on behalf of all of law enforcement, Um, I am sorry. So it shouldn't happen that way. However, now as all this starts to um, come through the courts, potentially through the courts, with lawsuits having to bring lawyers in, it will get messier. And the unfortunate thing is you are just trying to back the train up and have a basic investigation done here. I was mortified that evidence, very important evidence, was still left in the apartment. And I guess my first question would be, has anything changed from the Tucker interview to tonight where somebody has gone in and collected evidence?
Nobody. Nobody. We actually wrote to chief of police, and we did everything we can to bring their awareness. In fact, like we wrote through another attorney to chief of police, medical examiner, chief medical examiner, city administrator. Like they just picked up for a day. They say we opened it on December 29. They looked at the crime scene pictures and they concluded homicide. Then December 30th, they claimed that they looked at the CCTV footage and they considered it as self-unaliving. But
Mm.
we figured out that they haven't even talked to people leasing office. They haven't picked up CCTV. They're just making a statement. They're just telling that, okay, we looked at CCTV, we called it as self-unaliving. Uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
like,
Poornima, I just want to something you just said obviously made my ears perk up. Did you say originally it was ruled a homicide? And is that what you just said?
yes,
And for how long? And
29,
for how long?
one day they said it's a homicide, December 29th, just that day. When
You
they
know what's
looked at
amazing?
the
I
crime
don't. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I won't do it again. I promise. But that is the exact same scenario with this Ellen Greenberg story. They originally ruled it a homicide, and then they, after pressure, ruled it undetermined. And then 3 months later, that's when they switched it after some closed door meetings. And I have to be careful because Scott lives in outside of Philadelphia, but there's a bit of corruption sometimes in Philadelphia, and they were able to switch it from a homicide ultimately to a self unaliving. I didn't know that it was ruled a homicide, but again, I apologize for cutting you off.
But here, like the case is very high profile case, and his testimony, and if he were alive, it would have disturbed billions of dollars in the entire AI industry. And it didn't take 3 months to turn, it took one day. From step one, I learned that police have gone inside the apartment. They found the body, they seen the gunshot wound, they came back saying that there's no gun there. And then that's what I heard from the eyewitness. Then when they went inside later, they came back and said the gun was under his leg, it was hidden. So these kind of things are obvious for experienced law enforcement. And even the medical examiner who saw the body, he was not a doctor, he was not qualified to call it a suicide without medical examination. You know what I mean? Just by observation. That is unacceptable. We will hold all of them responsible. We will take action on them for negligence. And even OCME, we can write to the OCME association telling that there is malpractice and they have not followed the protocols. We can cancel off their accreditation, which they have worked very hard. If they don't release a report by 90 days, we are taking that step.
Well, I would not want Balaji and Poornima coming after me. I can tell you that right now. But Scott, again, my ears just perked up because I'm learning just like you are. Poornima or Balaji, please just elaborate a little bit. You said the gun was found under his leg. For those who do not know, there was a single gunshot wound, and people don't necessarily believe he died instantly. We'll get into that. That maybe he was bleeding, and also there's issues with the projectile of the bullet that we're going to get into. But when you say under the leg, do you mean like literally under the leg where it wouldn't have been possible to unalive himself and
And
obviously
put
then
it there.
hide the gun? Yeah. Scott Duffy, your reaction to that? I mean, if this is truly under the leg, how does one take one's life and then hide a gun under your leg? It seems impossible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what? The worst thing is at 2 o'clock, the police officer told me, ma'am, you go home, we'll inform you in 5 6 hours, because they wanted time to, they wanted time to cover up. They didn't want me to be there. But I sat there. When the medical examiner came and told me, we saw in the CCTV, no one went in with him, no one went out. Like, I'm like appalled. When did they go get the CCTV footage? I'm sitting right there. They never went into leasing office. They haven't even looked at the CCTV footage, but they just told me. That was a big lie. And another disturbing lie is, they told us his whole face is gone, his eyes are gone, and it's horrific look. Don't see his body. You know why they have done that? Because there were wounds on the body. If we had seen it, we would be freaking out that it's not. He didn't
Mm,
harm himself. So they have lied to us.
mm. Scott, I'm going to get to Doug, obviously, but this is disturbing, Scott. I mean, if I want to say this. Obviously, this is very emotional, understandably, for the parents. And the issue with law enforcement, Scott, I think you can speak to this, is you always have to separate kind of the emotion from the evidence. But given what Poornima is sharing right now, that the gun was under the leg and that he was, too, in too difficult a shape post injury for the parents to look at, and they wouldn't allow them to see him. Does this raise any red flags with your experience?
Yeah, and then having listened before and seeing some of the photos that there was blood throughout the apartment. So of course I have lots of questions, and the questions, and I come at this as an investigator, and I try to think of each and every one of these cases without um, an emotional attachment. In other words, the every department should walk into a death investigation and start with a homicide and then work it down from there. Let the evidence dictate, and just everything is a walkthrough, a documentation, photograph, video, every imaginable aspect. There is no theorizing yet. And so thereby everything is collected, everything is preserved, and to hear that you were not immediately provided either an officer or a victim witness advocate as soon as they made entry and they knew what they were dealing with, to have allowed you to be out there is first and foremost astonishing that any department could be that insensitive in today's day and age. But again, I could apologize all night and not uh, and to get nowhere, because I do believe there were missteps here, and so my thought is, how is there some rectification to try to push this thing forward, to where, you know, like you said, justice for your son. So the blood up. So I'll just, if I can, throw some particulars at you as an investigator, what would go through my mind. Um, Naturally, for them to not see the gun, it's under the body at some place that that's customary. It would be, especially if the body is in a position. And if I could speak frankly, it sounds like, listening to you were very, very brave. So the both of you, I think you're beyond, hey, let's get past these insensitivities and let's go full speed ahead for justice for your son. And so with regards to the blood about, my thought would be, okay, if this was self-inflicted, um, something happened that wasn't immediate. And so thereby, if this blood is as part of like the initial act, and then he goes to the bathroom, goes to there are other parts of the apartment, my thought would be, if you try to unalive yourself, you were not successful, but you're conscious and alert, and thereby walking around, you're going to do one of two things. And the one of two things is, I need help because I made a very bad decision. And thank God that it didn't work. And so I'm going to get help. That's one thing. If somebody decides light bulb goes off and I need to readdress it. The second is, if this is self-inflicted, it didn't work, and so now I'm going to ensure that this is complete. And so those are the two things. If this was self-inflicted, and I just don't see that. I don't see either one of those scenarios from the very little that I've seen. So those would be those questions that I would hope the evidence is going to be telling me. Um, and but it is going into this as if this is a homicide, and so every step should have been taken. Every aspect. Whose blood is that? Is that his blood? Is that somebody else's blood? Are there footprints? Are there fingerprints in blood? Whose are they? That whole apartment would have been secured. A search warrant would have been obtained. There would be a considerable amount of time from a crime scene unit. I don't even know if there was a crime scene unit as opposed to a few officers. Do you know right off the bat if you saw a crime scene unit coming in and suiting up and doing what they need to do?
Nobody came from police, never even talked to the witness. They didn't even come to the leasing office to talk to the leasing manager. They haven't talked to the friends. They even didn't ask me what was his mental state before
Yeah,
making a determination, right?
yeah.
He just
Mhm.
came back from vacation. He was not disturbed. And when they entered the apartment, how can they miss that he had just eaten his dinner? Food is 75% eaten. People who want to take their life, why would they kill themselves? And he just brought some stationery like shaving cream and all. So he
Mhm.
had plans to leave unopened boxes in his apartment, right? And also what they told me is a big lie. We did not see any strain or struggle in his body. We've seen the wounds. And then they said there was everything was intact in his apartment. We go and see in the bedroom, it's all ransacked. They were searching for something. Even in his living room, that it was ransacked. And we see the pen drive not there, and the computer was left on for all the 3 days. For people who are trained in this, is how can they miss this? They need to answer this to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just nothing about this that, though there are strange things, and I, having been to both kinds of scenes, knowing that you are dealing with a tremendous amount of emotions, I can tell you from the law enforcement side that no one ever wants to tell the loved one of the one that is deceased that it was because of someone who ended up taking their own life. If the evidence is overwhelming, leads to that. Um, but before you get to that, it is now talking to you and whoever is closest to him to do what we call a victimology. Tell me, I want to know everything, not only the last time and going the few days before, but I want to know 6 months, a year behind. I want to know if there's any documented, undocumented. I want to know if 5 years ago, did he have a down day? And did he ever say, this is so tough on me? I want to know all those. And so thereby, if there's a zero, um, it's going to be corroborated. And so the fact that you were not even interviewed bothers me terribly.
Yeah, I mean, Scott, how do you go and rule something a self unaliving and not even speak to the family about the mental state of the person? I'm no law enforcement officer, but I think that's pretty obvious. A lot of people are asking, how can you help? Same way as with Ellen Greenberg. The best thing I think you can do, and look, there's some big media names. Tucker Carlson interviewed Poornima, but please, not from me, but for this set of parents here, uh, share and retweet this story. I'll tweet it out at podcast STS. I'll put it up on Instagram. at Surviving the Survivor and just share and retweet. Um, please do that. Poornima, to you. Actually, Doug, let me go to you because you haven't gotten a word in yet. And I'm just curious, and I want to get to the geofencing in a moment, but obviously you're a seasoned investigator as well, and you're just hearing all these things, the gun under the leg, not interviewing the parents, not bringing in a crime scene unit, and the COE is going to get some pictures of the apartment. So what jumps out at you the most, I guess, from what you've just been listening to?
Start with, I agree with, well, to begin with, I'm really sorry for your loss. And I've had losses in my extended family as well. I know they're tough, and I'm really sorry for what you're going through. I'm working a case very similar to this right now, where I'm about to start working that case. Same situation. A person was found deceased, and it was quickly ruled an unaliving. But so myself and my team are coming in to see if that's actually what happened. And I agree with everything Scott said. It's objectively looking at it, for me, it's not even the ruling they came to and the decision they came to, it's how quick they came to it. Right? There was just no investigation done. Right. And as Scott said, if that's the way the evidence points in the end, and there's overwhelming evidence, then that's where it points. But right now, there's no investigation. And looking at unalivings, there's very few unaliving situations that you can walk in and within 30 minutes decide that's what happened, because anything can be staged as well. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but anything can be staged, from notes to the scenario itself and the environment. So the investigation had to be done, right? And still has to be done. And, when I look at, this scene, as Scott said, it wasn't contained. It wasn't, didn't have proper crime scene technicians come in and go over the scene, collect evidence, and that all has to be done. And hopefully that his apartment is still undisturbed, and that can be done, and that only you have access and people aren't coming in and out. So hopefully that's the case, and that can be done in the future.
By the way, is that Poornima? Sorry, Doug. Is that the case? Do you know if that unit is sealed off? In the Greenbergs case, they let a cleaning crew go in there the second day. Do you know if it is sealed off?
No, they gave me the keys in 20 minutes after they discovered the body. They determined it's suicide. They gave the keys to me, and leasing office wanted to clean up. Like, we were shattered, but next day
The
we called
leasing
and said,
office.
"You're not going to clean up. You're going to hold off." And we've returned it as it is. It's almost 2.5 months now. It's as it is. And we are waiting. We were hoping that police will come and do their work, but we called a crime scene investigator. We're going to call, like, we've hired a private investigator. We'll do the DNA collection and fingerprint collection. And when the law enforcement comes, we will hand it over to them.
Yeah. By the way, I call it a crime scene, and COE is calling them crime scene. Technically, it's a misnomer because it's a death investigation. So not necessarily a crime. However, the family, and it sure sounds like there might be one. But are you okay, parents, if we show the apartment? Are you okay with that? Because I
Yes.
don't want to. Okay, so the COE will load them in. We'll get to those in a minute. Ned Smith, my friend in the chat always, had a question about if you know if they tested for fingerprints on the firearm. There was a firearm. Suchir did purchase a firearm, I believe, back in January. I know that there was no gun residue found on his hands, but either Balaji or Poornima, do we know if they tested for fingerprints on the weapon?
We don't even know, right? Is if anybody does any investigation, then they can validate if his gun was used at all. From what we know, like, we interviewed many residents of the apartment, no one heard the gunshot sound. So maybe a silencer was used, and Suchi did not have silencer. Like, we have lot of questions to be answered,
They
but
haven't given the reports
they
yet.
haven't given the
Yeah.
information for us to conclude. They're blocking the information from us, so we will drive into obviously, right? Like the company, there's a big company involved, like they will be looking at that company and they will try to cover up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Sam,
Poornima, I'm sorry, continue. I didn't, sorry about that.
the mayor of San Francisco is Sam Altman's friend, and Sam
Mm.
Altman was leading the transition team of the new governor. Where do we get the justice from?
Yeah, that's a great question. So those who don't know, Sam Altman founded OpenAI, and Suchir didn't think very highly of him. Either does Elon Musk, for whatever that's worth. But he's not a he's a polarizing figure. I'll get into that too, including, by the way, his own sister filed suit against him for alleged SA. I can't say the word, but his own sister filed suit against him, which, you know, that's always something, in my opinion, as the son of a psychiatrist and a licensed therapist, when the family is having those sorts of potential issues, there's some big potential problems going on here. But this is actually a great idea. The San Francisco Board of Supervisors meetings are every Tuesday. The public, I did not know this, can call in during public comment and demand an investigation into Suchir's death. So, Justice, don't F with Justice. If you can let us know when Tuesday and maybe get us a number, I'll be happy to put that up and we can get people here to call in. And honestly, that's what I love about switching from traditional media to this, is we can really advocate for these victims' family. And this story just has so many parallels right now to Ellen Greenberg's case that it's mind blowing. In that particular incident, in that particular case, the fiance's cousin is connected to the now governor of Pennsylvania, so it goes same thing. There's political ties there. But Poornima, back to you. I know you had a question about geofencing, and you got the guy here for it, the geo profiler. So go ahead. And by the way, these are your best guests, so feel free at any point to jump in and ask them any questions that you would want to ask investigators. You got two phenomenal guys here for free. So there you go.
Yeah, one question I was thinking is the satellite picture. Can we get that time? Which cars are around that vicinity or apartment complex? Is it possible to get a satellite image in that?
It can be. There's some private companies that you can go to that do flights over U.S. cities and take satellite imagery. And you can either buy a subscription service to those companies. I can dig up some of those names for you. I'm not sure if you can buy individual days or not, but there are companies that do flyovers and give fairly up to date. Now, it's not going to be every day though, right? They may fly over there, each city, say, I don't know, once a week, once every 2 weeks at best. So to get up to date imagery, that would be higher up government. You'd have to get the imagery from some level of government or defense higher up. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Supposing we know the place where these people who killed my son stayed, then can we do geofencing around that area to figure out that crime scene? They may be smart, they may not have brought their cell phones. But if we get to the point of where they stayed, we can probably do the geofencing of the hotel or the residential area wherever they stayed, get their cell phone numbers. I was thinking.
Yeah, there's a couple ways you can go about that. So a geofence warrant is one type of a reverse warrant. The other two are keyword search warrants, which I'll get into, and then investigative genetic genealogy is the third one. Now, for a geofence warrant, most of those go to Google because Google's obviously the biggest provider and they have the most location data. Now, in December 2023, Google started to change their policies. And sometime in 2024, they switched it from 18 months, I think, to 3 months. They keep the data. So if Google is still authorizing those, you have a few weeks left. right, to get that reverse warrant, that geolocation warrant from Google. Now,
And Doug, how do you request that? I'm sure Poornima's ahead of me, but how do you actually request that?
the law
You
enforcement has to ask for it, and they would know how. They would know how to fill out that warrant and ask for it, right? And you got to be very specific with a geofence warrant, because the reason they're they're looking into them and they're restricting them now is because it encroaches on the Fourth Amendment. It gets closer to that concept of a general warrant, because technically you could do a geofence warrant for the entire Earth and get everybody's data if you wanted to. So you got to be very specific in asking for a geofence warrant. And as you mentioned, you would want to ask for that specific apartment complex during a specific time. Now, the way it works is it's still a little more complicated than that, because the way it works is law enforcement would ask for a time and place. So a specific place and a specific time, say 8 to 4 o'clock on that day or whatever it is, hypothetically speaking, that apartment complex. And then what Google does is Google pulls all the location data for that time and place. And then they give it to law enforcement, but without any personal identification attached to it. So then law enforcement has to take that and narrow it down even further. Now, the one good thing about this happening in an apartment complex, and maybe you can, what's the apartment like? You don't have, I don't want an address, but
we don't need an address, but yeah, is it like a luxury condo? And I know the police are saying they didn't see anything on surveillance, but there was 2 other entrances. So I assume Poornima, it's a very big apartment, relatively speaking, as a lot of buildings are in San Francisco.
And what floor was he on?
He was on 4th floor. But unfortunately, there's only one CCTV on the main entrance. There are 2 more entrances to the building. There's no CCTV there. It's very easy for them to cover up. There are key fobs. We are looking for the key fob swipe to see if we can find any data around it. But if law enforcement is not cooperating with us, how do we even get the geofencing data from Google?
Well, I'll get to that in a sec, but it's actually good that he was on the 4th floor, because when you get cell phone data, right? Cell phone data does not give you elevation, but geolocation data from Google actually gives you elevation as well. So you can tell which floor of an apartment building somebody was on. So if law enforcement can get that warrant and get that information, they can take that anonymized data and then they can narrow it down to who was on the 4th floor in that time span.
Okay.
So that's something that they can look into and do. Now, the other thing I wanted to touch on was the keyword search warrant. So if Google, and don't get me wrong, geofence data can be taken from other people other than Google. You can take it from Apple, Uber, Lyft. So you can get these warrants from other places as well. It doesn't have to be Google. They're just the biggest. They have the most data.
Okay.
But the keyword search warrant is also an option if Google pushes back. And the keyword search is, what you do is, again, you give say a radius. We'll just hypothetically say 5-mile radius from the apartment, and you give them specific keywords. So for this, you would give his name, his address, the name of his apartment, and something else, right? You can give them as many as you want. And anybody that searched those words in a certain time span will pop up. So if somebody is looking to go to his place but doesn't know where he lives, they obviously have to check his address, and then they have to map it out and they have to find it, right? So a keyword search warrant is another route that law enforcement can take. And they use it a lot in abduction cases, for example, right? Who went to that house and took that child, right? Because that person would have to know that address. So it's kind of the same thing. How did they get there? And if you have a manner of death and a cause of death, you can search those as well, right? If it's something very specific. So you can put in, and you want to put in as specific a keyword search as possible to kind of narrow it down. But these are two options. But these are things that law enforcement is going to have to do.
Yeah. So Mo Dean, who is typically America's favorite troll, but serious tonight, did the parents hire someone? And by the way, we're looking at the building in San Francisco. And I don't know, and we can ask the parents if Suchir was he generally neat or not, Poornima?
Relatively neat. I mean, I can't say this the way it look. It is not. This is ransacked one, but before
He was
he
clean,
kept it.
actually.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
have
So,
pictures of his apartment. I can prove that he maintained his apartment well.
yeah, and look at it now. It does look ransacked, which is what the family is saying. But Mo Dean was asking about this autopsy. So there was a private autopsy, as far as I know. We're going to get to this, and you'll see there's blood. And I know it's difficult. First of all, you see the food there. And ironically, again, in the Ellen Greenberg case, she was found dead, and she was in the process of making a fruit salad. She also stopped to fill up her car with gas. Who does that if they're going to then go home to take their own life? It doesn't make sense. But here you see that food as an indicator. And I'm going to go to Scott too to just ask him what he sees here. You see a knocked over garbage can, and you see blood in different areas. Now, again, I'm not an investigator. We're going to get to Scott in a moment, but the private autopsy was done, I think, by a guy named Dr. Joseph Cohen, and he found that there was a very unusual bullet trajectory, Scott. It was downward and left to right. Meaning that I believe it went from the top of the nose. It never hit his brain, but it lodged in his brain stem, apparently. They never looked at brain, according to this private autopsy. They never looked at brain or blunt force trauma. And that suggests this bullet in the brain stem and this contusion that they also found on the back of the head, that maybe he bled to death rather than having an instant death. Now, Poornima, you can help me here, because there's another doctor, Dr. Dinesh Rao, who also was criticizing police for missing very critical evidence, namely synthetic hair. Synthetic hair is found on wigs, right? So was someone there in a disguise? Also, earbuds, which I want to ask you about. And again, blood spatter in different parts of the unit. So I know I just threw a lot out at you, but Scott Duffy, let me go to you. I know you're not a pathologist, but is there kind of a traditional way, I guess, that people will take their lives? Because here the doctor is suggesting that because it was top to bottom on a angle that I think also goes against the stronger hand, that he is thinking that it is not a self-unaliving. What's your take on the up to down trajectory?
Yeah, it is an anomaly. It's not something that you would typically see. And so thereby that just makes you keep looking further and further. Is he a lefty or a righty?
right-handed.
He was right-handed, yeah.
Right-handed. And so thereby saying that this is the left side of the nose is the entry point.
It's here. It's right here in this point. This is the entry point.
But on
Right.
on the left side, I'm just trying
Eyebrow.
to think.
Right side of the eyebrow, like this.
Got it.
Okay.
But even then, what bothers me is we called a doctor who did like coroner's office, who did the autopsy. She told us he shot himself in the brain and the death is instantaneous. That's not
That
true,
was not true. Yep.
right? And
Yes.
how can she be so negligent to tell parents that kind of information without even doing the autopsy? They didn't do the autopsy. They just did the CT scan. I don't know what they found. Can they not? She said, we did the CT scan. Can she not find the bullet has not touched the brain? Why did she tell that to us? I have the time and date the conversation happened. I have the log.
Yeah. Poornima, if I can, it's very difficult from very, very small snapshots to get an idea of the bigger picture. But where ultimately was he found? Do you know?
I wasn't allowed to go into the crime scene, but what I was described was he was lying on his back, his head was towards the bathroom, leg towards the other side of the window. That's the description I was given. And
Okay.
I was also given that the gun was found under his leg. Unfortunately, we don't have the crime scene pictures, and we are helpless at this point without having the complete information to conclude anything.
Are
Yeah.
you confident now that you're suing the city that they'll actually hand over these documents, or do you think that they're going to play hardball with you?
My suspicion is they are going to delay this report. Our first investigator, we just fired him because he said they may take months.
Hmm.
Like, my suspicion is they want to delay the report, giving some excuses so they can find an easy way to cover it under the rug. Unless the court orders, I don't expect them to release the report.
Hmm. Well, I've got a good investigator for you, Scott Duffy and Phil Waters. Those two, about as heavy hitting as it gets. We talk off camera about that. By the way, Scott, I hope Phil doesn't yell at me for not having him on tonight, but I don't know. That's a whole other story. Um, so back to the parents here and Scott. I mean, these are the photos, obviously. It sure looks like there was a possible struggle. It was ransacked. You see the food there. You see the wider shot here. Um, Doug, when you look at this, what jumps out? I mean, does the food that he's eating food, does that jump out at you? Why would there be a knocked over garbage can? I mean, things just it's the old Occam's razor. Like, the simplest thing is the simplest thing. If you're going to take your life, are you going to be kicking over garbage cans? Are you going to, who knows? I don't know, but I don't think so. What do you see here?
Yeah, I mean, the whole environment stands out to me. As we can all see it, it looks ransacked or it's just very messy. So it would take understanding a bit more about who he was and the lifestyle he led. But there's this food that's half eaten. There's different areas of the house that there's seems to be evidence. There's the just the blood spatter itself. You'd want to get somebody in that specializes in that because there's different forms of blood spatter here, different types of blood spatter. And if you haven't cleaned any of that up yet, I would suggest not cleaning it up and leaving some of that and having your private investigator have a blood spatter analyst look at it and try to recreate the scene if possible.
That's great advice. That's great. I'm sorry, Doug. I want to make
okay.
sure that we're going step by step. But Balaji and Poornima, have you left it? Doug is suggesting to leave it as is, so they can go in now and process it. If your private investigator can do that.
And we haven't touched anything.
We
It is
haven't
left
touched
as it
anything.
is. Yes.
We're
Okay.
paying the rent for 3 months already. We paid. We're paying the rent, and we want it to be intact. In case, we are hoping someone would come and take a look from the government, right? Law enforcement or something. How disappointing it should be for parents who have lost their kid, not even get the support from the authorities. Like, where is
Yeah.
humanity?
Yeah. Scott Duffy. I mean, one of the things that Poornima said that was said very quickly, they ruled it as a self-unaliving in 40 minutes and hand her the keys and go, okay, thanks, see you later. What kind of I mean, part of being a law enforcement officer, and we know this from you, is compassion. Who does that? I mean, it just says, here you go, we're done. Sorry about your son, here are your keys. I mean, that drives me crazy. I'll let you comment on that, but also the crime scene. Again, there's this knocked over trash can, blood spatter in multiple locations. What's very interesting, though, they also reportedly found synthetic hair tufts. That would be indicative of a wig, maybe, right, Scott? I mean, what is that?
Yeah, I was it seemed to make sense to me when I was listening to the Tucker show. So I guess my question would be, if I can, how do we? It is a contaminated scene. If you don't want to call it a crime scene, it is a contaminated scene, and the fact that the apartment complex is allowing you to preserve that's good. However, how do you try to correct, because every day that goes by, it becomes contaminated because it is not secure, even though it's locked. From our purposes, it's not secure, which means anyone could be going in and out, in and out. So every day that goes by bothers me that if this is to be changed to a homicide, that's a problem.
Can I
My
say
question
something?
would be, if I can, Poornima, because I remember you saying that you made a either a complaint, a request, or something into the FBI office.
Yes, can I say something that you need
Please.
from your perspective, from law enforcement perspective, it's contaminated. But where we come from is we had the keys from day one.
Yeah.
And
We have a camera
we
installed
have
there.
a camera installed. And
Right.
also, whoever enters the building, there is a key fob swipe, and they can be
Yeah.
seen in the CCTV.
Yeah.
Very few people we can vote, take oath under the, in the court that nobody has entered other than two of us and one crime scene investigator and our attorney.
Good.
Nobody.
No, you're doing what you you should not be doing that. In other words, it should be law enforcement doing that. And I just hate the fact that you're having to do all this, spend your own time and your money in order to try to preserve a piece of history there where due diligent investigators can get in and collect document. My question would be, and is this, did 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 the FBI return a call? Are you in touch with them? Did you meet with them?
No, actually, we also reached the Department of Justice through Rokhanna. We are waiting to hear from them. I also made a complaint to FBI about it. If there's an option for complaining about the hitman murder or something like that, I wrote a complaint there. We spoke to FBI intake agent about a month ago. We haven't heard from them. Maybe the transition time, but
Yeah, we personally went to the FBI office in San Francisco.
You did.
Yeah, we did that. But they said you have to have an agent who can call you and then you can come to office, they told
Yeah.
that.
I
So,
I get that. So you went there and they basically said you're going to have to make an appointment,
that's
and
correct.
then you do an online. I'm just trying to see how you get it to a more urgent request, in the sense that, um, will the FBI, if an FBI supervisor was looking at this and saying, "What? I don't believe this is not possible, but it's happened. Let me get somebody in there and at least preserve." And by preserving it, sending in a unit that can go ahead and do everything that needs to be. As I read the comments, of course, if the department is going to say this is not a crime scene, so thereby not an investigation, those are all true, but this is a major police department that has probably a fantastic crime scene unit. And so thereby, the number one misstep is treating it as if it's a suicide because you or an unaliving. Sorry, but then you just allow that to happen. It doesn't mean you can't expend the resources to go and collect and do everything, preserve it, and make a determination later. My thought would be, as I'm trying to throw things at you that could be beneficial, if it is true that he was getting ready to testify some sort of federal proceeding, there is, with regards to a tampering with witnesses, and thereby the FBI has jurisdiction. Here, absolutely, the FBI does not have jurisdiction. They would be an assist at the very least. But if you have something to show that he was, or called to be, some paper, some document, that he was going to be some sort of witness
yes,
Yes, we
in
he
have.
is
proceeding,
We have that.
thereby, and the timing where you can tell the FBI, we are in dire straits here, as Doug has already talked about. The time is ticking for anything left on a cell tower, anything for a search warrant to be able to grab before that data disappears forever. Where that sense of urgency is, I know your protocols, FBI San Francisco, I know them. However, this is now urgent, and I need somebody to act today. as a possible tampering with the witness. And that's where I'm trying to just push. To me, I liked the squeaky wheel is going to get attention, and so thereby don't put the brakes on. Don't wait for that phone call. I think at some point you must be calling every day, speaking to a supervisor and saying, please, 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 let me speak to somebody, as opposed to having to file a complaint online, because it could very well go into cyberspace where it is getting put into a flood of many different tips that then have to be ciphered through, as opposed to something that's relevant here and now in San Francisco.
Yeah, and Poornima, I want to add to that. If STS Nation, they don't mess around. I always say we've got the best guests, which is true, but we have a better community. So if you would like our army of STS Nation to text, tweet, email, maybe the city attorney, the mayor, you let us know. You get me that. We'll talk off camera. I'll put it out there for STS Nation. And like Scott said, you've got to be a squeaky wheel, which I think you've been, to your credit so far. I want to thank Isagal Aksu, who watches us in Turkey. She said, was there no single person among the authorities in this case who behaved like a human being? And she also gifted 50 memberships. So thank you very much. Balaji, I don't know, if you want to take this or your wife, but another, apparently he gave the New York Times, and he did speak. He blew the whistle and spoke to the New York Times, which also, is of concern in terms of an investigation. But apparently he gave some sealed documents. There was even talk of him having a potential thumb drive with sensitive information. And that just brings us back to these photos here, where maybe this was why the apartment looks like it does, like it was sort of ransacked a little bit. So Balaji, to you, do you know, was there this thumb drive? Did he have access to information that no one else would have, that maybe someone would try to want to silence?
He had, and in fact, he was told he was a custodian witness, and he was going to present that witness to the court. And also, I know that he had a pen drive, because about a year ago, I wanted to borrow from him, and he denied me. He said, "I need it. I'm using it." So
So we have his laptop and phone, iPhone, and we are planning to analyze using the digital forensics.
next
So
week.
we got the today court order. We got that to, authorize to open that. So we are applied to the Apple and other Google drives. Those we have to subpoena and get that.
We will get to the bottom of it, but what you said makes 100% sense. I think we should urge for an appointment. Our attorney promised to get an appointment with the FBI. We should remind him and push for that, because time is running out.
That's interesting, because Teresa just said, Doug McGregor, time is of the essence. How much of the essence is it, in your opinion? There are a few more things that we need to get to, but this, to me, is a fascinating conversation on many levels. And again, huge thanks to Suchir's parents for being here. But how important is time, Doug?
Time's everything. And sorry, you do have his phone?
Yes.
Yes, we have it.
And can you get into his phone?
Not yet.
We got the court order to open the rights to open for us.
But
So
we don't have the passcode. Coming to the question, we don't have the passcode. We cannot access it unless we get an order from the court. We won't be able to open his phone. It might happen sometime next week, but timing is everything. We should stay focused. Thank you for the guidance. We should stay focused on meeting someone from FBI ASAP and having them get a warrant and conquer the data from the Google and other things that we might lose.
If you can get into that phone, you have about, if most of that data is kept for about 3 months, so you have about 20 days left, and your PI could take that phone to a company, pull the geolocation data from your son's phone,
Okay.
and map out his activities in the week, 2 weeks prior, because
Okay.
you might see he might have gone over to somebody's house, had a confrontation, and then that person came back, right? Anything could have happened in that week or 2 weeks prior. So what he'll want to look at is, was there any abnormal activity in
Yes.
his geolocations, in his location data within that last week? So they could do that too. And there's companies that can take that off that phone for you.
Last week he was in LA, he was with his friends, he was vacationing, he was backpacking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scott Duffy, there's a comment on the screen about this being a special case, thus needs to be moved out of this jurisdiction. Before you answer that, Poornima mentioned it kind of quickly again. Suchir was set to be a key witness. Correct me, Poornima, here if I'm wrong, but in a lawsuit involving OpenAI and Microsoft, and he was going to be a witness against them 1 week before his death. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
November 18th, he was named as custodian witness, and 22nd, he was killed. It's just couple of days. But
And I'm sorry. It was, I think, when did he speak to the New York Times? Was that a month before, and then a week before was when he was going to be the witness?
like actually, he interviewed with New York Times a month and a half before. October 11th was his interview, and the article was published on 23rd. They already started watching him after that, and probably it's just coincidence that the document has been submitted to court. I'm sure New York Times attorneys would have had a conversation with OpenAI, and when they submitted, the official submission was on 18th.
Mm. Um, This is interesting. Scott, I'm going to have you take this and the moving potentially jurisdictions here, or moving it to like the FBI. But if there's a wireless router in the apartment, look at the log of the Wi-Fi logs. I don't know if that's more Doug or Scott, but Scott, your thoughts on that, and then we can get Doug's. But also, what about a potential different agency coming in to investigate?
I'll let Doug answer the Wi-Fi log issue.
Doug, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I'm not sure how much they could get from the Wi-Fi logs. They may be able to get identification data for a device, but when you're looking at the location data, it's taken from everything. Your cell service, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, every single app in your phone is taking everything you use. But it would be interesting to see if somebody automatically connected to the Wi-Fi, if it's got that record in there, because if somebody's been to his apartment before, has had the password, they show up, it would automatically connect. I mean, it's a possibility. I'm not sure whether it would what you'd get out of that.
Real quick, Scott, before you answer the jurisdictional question, Poornima Ramarao, what about obviously the New York Times is enormous reach, big newspaper. He was set, by the way, to then also speak to the Associated Press, which has a massive reach. And I know we had Troy Wolverton on from the San Francisco Examiner, but Balaji and Poornima, do you think the media is doing its job? Do you think there are enough stories or reporters chasing this? You're shaking your head no. How come?
No, nobody has actually even talked to us, and we contacted New York Times. New York Times has not even reported it, and like we are really taken aback that any of the national channels, like internationally, it's a news, and this is such a high-profile case. Why the news media is not covering? Except small newspapers like San Francisco Examiner, San Francisco Standard.
Mercury News, yeah.
I have to say, from my own experience, that very sadly, news has become political. So if you go to a left-leaning channel, they've got relationships with a Democrat governor in California, a Democrat mayor in San Francisco. My suggestion is to go to the other end of the spectrum there and reach out to. I'm not being political. I'm telling you what I would do, because this is the reality. I would go to Fox News Channel. I would go to Newsmax, and I can help connect you with people at all these networks. I mean, I'll talk. I happen to know the senior booking producer for MSNBC. I'm not saying that they're going to do a story, but I'll help you offline in terms of getting that kind of exposure. Obviously, Megyn Kelly would be fantastic for you, and Tucker Carlson is a very big name. So, with all that said, Scott Duffy, I know you have lingering thoughts, but in terms of a jurisdictional move, I assume you're going to say it's too premature for that. And the San Francisco PD, they would have to call in the FBI, not the other way around, correct?
Yeah, so the primary jurisdiction is wherever that apartment exists, and if that is San Francisco, it is San Francisco. They have the jurisdiction, and that jurisdiction can't be taken away from them. FBI would be an assist agency, and they would be called in because San Francisco said, "Hey, we got something here that you may want to send somebody over and kind of parallel with us." That's how these things typically go when a department feels like they have something and then say there could be a federal jurisdiction. And that's often how I arrived at scenes that I had nothing to do with. However, this I just feel like, and I'm at a loss for it. I cannot say why. I can't give you an answer. I don't have one. When this seems to be blaring to me that it is not an obvious, and the evidence took me to their answer, and that's why my thought, and I'm also going to tell you as a former law enforcement, the unfortunate thing is when there are civil suits, the law enforcement pulls back, and so thereby, while this gets fought in the courts, my fear is that there are things that can and should be done by law enforcement in the way of crime scene to turn this in to a crime scene and get some things there. I don't know what they've done. You don't have the reports. You don't know what's been done. When there are things, for example, foreign objects, whatever this whatever you want to call it. As I knew you were talking on Tucker with regards to some sort of wig. But
Yeah.
if it is not a wig, if it's a strip or something, is it something that if this is something other than an unaliving, and there is at least one other individual involved and wore some sort of disguise that then gets discarded in some sort of scuffle, um, boy, that's key. If but I don't know what that is, and it's been left there. Which bothers me, especially if there's nothing you know of that your son would have that there, whatever that is. I don't, right? It's conjecture now as to what it could be. It's some sort of synthetic hair fiber.
Yeah. Someone pointed out that it was Halloween. Do we know if he dressed up for Halloween just before?
No, he never. He never.
He doesn't
Never.
strike me.
It's just November. Why would it be Halloween, right? It's end
Yeah.
of November.
Yeah,
He strikes me
November
as a little.
20.
He
Is it
strikes me
November
as a little too
22nd?
smart. Yeah, November 26th. And look at
26th.
this, Sane Man. Thank you, Sane Man. Just posted the link of the stream on Blue Sky. The COE is making me nervous. She says she thinks someone's battery is running low, and I don't want to lose the parents. So, Poornima or Balaji, this is interesting and important potentially. Sam Altman, very powerful guy in the
Yes.
world of tech out in California. He runs OpenAI. Sam knew Suchir knew Sam. And from what I understand, Suchir never spoke badly about anyone, but he said some things to either you or friends about Sam Altman. What was he saying?
He was saying he's manipulative. And you know what? His anger may be because he knew something grave about Sam Altman. If he has to say something negative, there will be 100 times, 1,000 times more facts. Because I've never heard Suchir complain about school friends, even in elementary grade. He never complained about his boss. He never complained about anyone. If he has to be so vocal, there is some ugly truth that Suchir knew about Sam Altman.
Yeah. By the way, someone's saying call the AG in charge. But again, I just want to point out this doesn't have to do with this case, but this is factual information that Sam Altman's own sister filed a
It's
separate lawsuit accusing him of sexual abuse. That is never a good thing. Either it's inflammatory on the part of the sister, potentially true, but where there is smoke, there's often fire there. So also very important. A couple last things from me. You mentioned this earlier, but very quickly, he did not leave a note, which is atypical, correct? And it seems like you guys are very loving, very close. At the very least, being a mama's boy myself, I know that I would want to leave some sort of message. There was no note, right?
No.
No note.
No.
He was actually planning to go to CES with dad on November 22nd.
I was the one to. I spoke to him around 7:30 that night where he was killed. So I was the last person I can say. So he was in a good mood. He said he enjoyed the trip, which he went for the birthday celebration. He came that day. It was raining that day. Especially, I asked it was raining in LA. He said no. It was nice. We went for hiking, and he went with his four schoolmates. He usually go for every year, so it is not a new place also. And yeah, I was asking about this CES, which is that time it was January 3rd. So he showed interest to come with me. Yes.
Right? That's strange. He had plans to join dad in December, in January. Like, why would he even leave a note? There's no likelihood of him unaliving himself. There's no likelihood. Because yesterday one of his friends called me and he said Suchit was the most happiest person I ever know. He was always happy. He studied UC Berkeley with him. So when none of his friends believe he was depressed, he was upset. None of his friends believe he
He
could
can
do
take his
this.
life. Yeah.
Well, that is a very important piece of the puzzle right there. Final question. He did purchase a Glock, a firearm, back in January 2024. He seems like, unlike myself, like he kept emotions inside, didn't bug his parents, which I still do constantly. But were you aware that he bought this Glock? Did he tell you why? Did you have any idea that he potentially was fearful about something?
You know what? I think I take the responsibility there. I was an overprotective parent. When you become overprotective, right? Kids try to stay away and not won't tell any concerns because mom will make a big deal out of it. That's probably why he isn't mentioned. But we spoke to his close friend Franklin, and he mentioned that he bought it for self-defense, but he never used it. He kind of suspected there was a potential danger to him a year ago. That's when he wanted to leave OpenAI and go to PhD. So there's something that happened in December that made him buy on January 4th. We need to uncover that once we get access to
Mm.
his email chat conversations, we will get the puzzle solved there. Why did he buy?
Even he
Um,
bought motorbike recently. I mean,
Motorcycle.
motorcycle, Yamaha one. So it was surprise. He
He
bought.
didn't tell us
Yeah.
because only child, right? Like we were
yeah,
very overprotective of him. And he
yeah,
felt he was, like if he tells, mom will make a big deal out of it, and he wouldn't tell me.
yeah.
I think that's the parenting thing that I look back and say, you know what? Why didn't my son come and tell me?
Mm.
Can I ask a question on the weapon? Um, do you know how he stored it? Where? In a box, in a safe?
In a box. Yes.
It was in a box.
I think the picture was there in
No,
the.
they put the box on the table right next to the spiritual book. Bhagavad Gita is like our Bible. Suchir was reading that book, and next to that book, they put the gun box.
Who you say they? Who's they?
I mean, whoever came inside. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
people have put that. Obviously, they were, and there is a bullet left behind in the gun box.
Mm.
Police haven't picked it up, and we don't know why.
I'm sorry, were there any missing bullets?
Like they picked up the four bullets and like in one pack, one what you call as packet or something. Like they picked up the missing bullet, like the leftover bullet in the gun with them. Usually they will unload it and then pick it up, right? So they made it look like he's already used the other. That's their intention. But Suchir never used the gun before. His friends have claimed that.
Wow. Well, listen, Poornima and Balaji have spent, I understand, already $100,000 of their own money. And again, this brings me back to the Greenbergs, who spent $800,000 over a 14-year period of their own money, but no parent, no family, no civilian should have to pay for a police investigation or a law enforcement investigation. This case is getting under my skin like Ellen Greenberg, and I tend to get a little pit bullish, and I'm not giving up on this case. We're going to stay on it and hopefully have Suchir's parents back on. But final thoughts. The Geo Profiler, by the way, has a new show on our second channel, which is True Crime Talk, STS True Crime Talk, the best talk in all of true crime. He is the Geo Profiler. Real quick, before I let him say his final goodbye, there is some breaking news with Donna Adelson. She apparently was roughed up, and maybe worse, in a shower in jail. And we're going to have the details on that and other information on a second show at 9 o'clock. But Doug McGregor, the floor is yours. You've got a lot of experience here. Your final thoughts, your advice to Suchir's parents.
My final thoughts are, do what you're doing. I think you're doing a great job in following up with this, getting a private investigator, keeping the apartment, keeping it intact the way it is. I would suggest, not let, I'm sure your PI is fantastic, but make sure anything that's processed is processed correctly, or if there is any evidence, they won't take it into account anyway. And what you're doing with the phone is an excellent idea, so keep going with that. And as everybody here has mentioned, keep his name in the news, keep it in the spotlight. And if there's anything that your private investigator would like to discuss that I can help with, I'm always available.
By the way, when I mentioned that stuff earlier about reaching out to Fox News where I used to work, I saw a comment in the chat, which is funny. I'm not watching you anymore. I just cannot stand that people are political about an issue like this. I'm simply saying that I was inside the media, and a left-leaning network, there's nothing wrong with being left-leaning. They're not likely to cover this because media has become so incredibly partisan. I'm just looking to help this family, and I happen to have contacts. The COE happens to have contacts, and I'm going to reach out to my contacts is all I was saying. So you are the one making it political, whoever you were, not me. And I am telling the truth because that is why mainstream media is starting to fall apart, because there is no straight factual news. And so you got to go get your news from the people who are willing to report it correctly. Scott Duffy, sorry about that little rant. Special agent retired Scott Duffy, obviously a super shrewd investigator. He's a regular on our Friday shows. He is a professor. He teaches, and I know both Doug and Scott, I'm sure, will be in touch with the parents after the show. But Scott, your final thoughts here. And by the way, in terms of stirring the pot, that's STS Nation and myself and the COE. That's not a Doug job. That's not a Scott job. That's people watching this podcast need to reach out and bug the crap out of people until this thing is resolved. Scott Duffy.
Yeah, so I'm going to push back a little bit on Doug, only to say there's still time, even though time has gone by, to get law enforcement involved here. This is still critical. There's still that window. Somehow, some way, I know you have civil litigation going on in order to get things, but continue to pull at the heartstrings. Demand the chief provide you somebody to speak with. Get in front of the FBI. Get outside of that virtual complaint. Let them know there is a scene that you are holding and paying for to be preserved, and say, please just get somebody in there. Unaliving scenes are horrible. Sometimes they are just do not look like what they are. But if from what you are saying is even half truth, law enforcement can fix this, and I just want to see them do that for your sake, to where then you can have a little bit of trust into what is going to be presented to you. That's what I say.
Real quick, this is very important. Don't F with justice here. You heard her earlier on saying that you can call in to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors meeting for public comment. Anyone can call in. How nice would it be if there was 100,000 callers and they had to extend it for 7 months to take all the calls? But it is Tuesday, 2 p.m. It looks like Pacific time. Don't F, if you could email me, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com with a few more details, as in a number 2. I will put that out on Twitter at Podcast STS. We'll put it out on Instagram, Surviving the Survivor. We'll put it out on our Patreon page, and we will put it out on YouTube, on the community page as well. Obviously, the last word goes to the parents. You've got Poornima Ramarao and Balaji, Ramamurthy. Balaji, let's start with you. The floor is yours. The investigators are yours. However you want to give us or provide us your final thoughts.
Yeah, right now we ourselves working as investigator. I used to watch FBI, the X-Files. Similar, there is two characters.
Balaji, they're asking you
Similar
what
that
you
we are
want.
doing our own investigation now. We are in the ground, so the authorities asked to do this role, but we are taking and doing it. So this thing has to be changed. So we are knocking the doors every day. Every authorities, we are
Right.
sending emails and phone calls. We are doing our part. Yes.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
this is a great question. Poornima, have you or Suchir's friends set up any kind of Facebook or Instagram page? People here want to be able to follow the story and be able to message you guys. Is there a social media page?
Yes, there is a page in Facebook called Justice for Suchir. There we keep updating, and also like I have a Twitter handle. I keep posting the updates and I keep pushing for answers. It's Rao Rao Poornima, my first name. I can share that in the comments of this page, so the
Yeah.
people can actually reach me there. And I've been getting a lot of help in the direct messages in Twitter as well. Some are helpful.
Yeah, I'll get that information. I'll have you email me it, and I will put it up. And people are also asking if you have a GoFundMe because this is going to get expensive. Do you have that?
Yes, and also change.org petition. It's about 1.5 months old. We can
Sure.
say share that as well. People have been about 15,000 people demanded FBI investigation. Newsom hasn't even come back with an answer. There's no response. And what kind of state do we live in?
Yeah. Sadly, one that's crumbled a little over the last bunch of years. But Poornima, you sort of just did your final word today. What to STS Nation, to the investigators. How would you like to end your appearance?
Yeah, we want the FBI to look into it, and we want to get to the bottom of the issue that brought our son to this stage, right? What was the reason he was killed? We want to know what was being, what they were trying to cover up by killing him. We want the world to know that, and if we find that, we will share it with the world. But we want the authorities to look into it, not only get justice for our son, but also make sure that the cause he was fighting for is heard, why he wanted to give evidence. Let's get that out and let's bring justice to him in that way too.
The COE's quick. She's already got the GoFundMe link up in the chat. She's got the Facebook page up. It would have taken me 17 hours to find all that. It would have taken Suchir 0.3 seconds, but I am no computer whiz. Listen, on a serious note, by the way, I don't know if you know, but my mother's a Holocaust survivor. So she got through everything with a little bit of humor. And I don't mean to minimize, obviously, the tragedy that you guys are facing, but I do want to say to Poornima and Balaji that you guys are incredible. I'm getting goosebumps. You guys are very inspirational. The way, the grace that you guys have going through this, only 2 months out from the loss of your only son. You're obviously incredibly smart, and you obviously raised an amazing child that literally could have changed. Everyone's like, oh, my kid could change the world. Suchir could have changed the world. He had that kind of a mind, that kind of brain. So just know that we're with you. And if you can stay on for a moment, I want to make sure that you, Scott, and Doug just exchange each other's information. And will you please come back on the show and keep us updated as to how things are changing and what you need from us?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. We're back at 9 o'clock with the latest on Donna Adelson. Stand by, and Balaji, Poornima, and Doug and Scott, stick around for 1 second.